I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who can add to what I presented. So this is, we'll call it a rough draft. Any corrections, changes, things like that, I'm more than happily incorporated. And what we're trying this time is Gordy's got, technology has invaded, and Gordy's going to be recording this live, and along with the images here will be on the website. Eventually, we were requested to, put it out there on the web so those people can view it live at their own homes, which leads to the one problem is we don't have any internet hookup here. And that's not insurmountable because you can do hotspot and stuff. But it's maybe something we're going to go into in the future. So you guys can sit at home and watch these riveting lessons on that one. And yeah, there'll be a quiz on this, Rita, afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, she was always worried about that, right?
Yeah.
Is that why you sat in the back? You're afraid to get called on or no? No, okay. So anyhow, I'm Phil Childs. I moved here in 1982. We had one daughter at that time. We located this area for the obvious reason that most people do, and that's to basically find a nice place to raise your children. And we have not been disappointed. As a side note, I was a science teacher for 37 years in the New York State system, and as a kid, science was my world, et cetera, et cetera. So I retired in 2008, and I decided to try to learn other things besides science. So we have an historical society, I think you've heard of it, right? And I decided to join it. I wasn't that active. I did a trustee thing and whatever. And eventually, I climbed the tree of eventually becoming the leader of the group, and that was 6 years ago, I guess. And the more I sat around and looked at books and publications and listened to the presentations over here, the more I realized that there's incredible stories. Now, I mean, that's part of its pride of the hometown. But, this 3-mile stretch that we have from basically here to, and I hope everybody sort of knows where the Gates Gonzalez house, I guess is the best way to call it, on that one, which is on Old Manicoke Road. A while back, and some of you could help me there, the state decided to straighten out a lot of the curves on Manicoke, and Old Manicoke Road was born, and that's used to be part of it. So I ended there for the simple reason that less than a half a mile up is Nanticoke, and that's another story, that type of thing. So I wanted to try to do it. The one gap we have, but we're working on now, is the within the town. Try to do a walking tour within the town. So it was my goal to basically start in Endicott, and now I've gone to the northern Maine, New York area. Started off with a generic photo of a forest. And I guess the thing you want to think about is what type of people came here almost 300 years ago. What drove them here, and how did they get here, and what they hope to find. And the proverbial, it's an old growth forest from hilltop to hilltop. All the game in the world was here, lions, tigers, and bears, and the other oh my's that we have here. There were Native Americans live in this area, and everybody knows the Nanticoke Creek was named after the tribe, the Nanticoke tribe. The thing you may or may not know is that they're from Maryland, the Nanticokes. Their life was getting complicated by white people taking over their land. Nanticoke means the water people. It had nothing to do with extreme, but actually, the Bay, Chesapeake and stuff. And they basically negotiated with the Iroquois tribes to get some land. And this was sort of like on the edge of the Iroquois world, and they allowed the Nanticokes to come up. So they literally got in their canoes and paddled north and wound up in this area. Now, this is all prior to 1700, basically. the first explorers in this area, settlers in this area, would have encountered Nanticokes. And the Native Americans have been here for 1,500 years before that. You find arrowheads in the archaeology department at Binghamton University as a great resource and collection on the history of this area, from Native Americans to whatever. So we'll go through this. This is a 1796 map of New York State, at least a reproduction of it, obviously. And in 1796, when this map was presented, those two red arrows point to the area that we call the Boston Purchase, which is our hometown, basically, from Johnson City to Owego, sort of, in there. And Massachusetts had access to the lands. New York State couldn't sell their own, so they made an agreement with Massachusetts. And 19 people got together and sort of did a land area where they would sell land to whoever wanted to, which is why a lot of our local people came from New England. You know, they knew they could buy it. This was not exclusive to our area. Binghamton itself was another land grant area given to Mr. Bingham from Pennsylvania. So people who came up would have bought the land from them in the different areas. The one caveat that the people who had who owned the rights to the land there, they had to get an agreement from the Native Americans that was okay to sell their own land, type of thing. So you can imagine what happened, and it probably did. You know, have a drink, let's talk about it for a while. You like my gun? Can I have your land? You know, whatever. It makes the Indians sound ignorant, but you know, those who ran the organization knew what they were doing, type of thing. So they got their agreements, sold the land. People knew about this area. Remember, it's an old growth forest. You couldn't take 3 steps without running into a tree. There were no roads. The Native Americans, however, had a transportation system from Cape Cod to basically, I want to say, New Mexico. And they traded. And so there were walking paths. There was one path that almost came through our area that you could go from the Hudson River to here. And reminding you something that your 5th grade teacher told you, but you didn't understand, there were no wheels back then. There were no wheels in North America. Most of you knew that? Okay, so how did people go from here to there? Well, you know, the horses were brought again from Europe by the Spanish. People had horses. They would have either used dogs, horses, or other ways of pulling the Travis rods, the two poles and whatever. And basically, as I said, it was a walking from here. And you'll find arrowheads around here made of copper from Michigan, or obsidian from New Mexico. So we knew there was a trade area. Good topic for another talk. Joanne, write that down. Okay.
Right here, Phil.
Okay, so another map at the same time, which doesn't look quite as good as the other one, but again, this is us in this area here. We were Tioga County, and it took a long time before Union County or Union existed, and in the early part of Maine, shall we say, they'll list in the books, Tioga County area. So, what do you got next? Okay, here's our map. Okay, this is from an 1855 map. And there's a really good 1855, 1866, 1876, and 1908 series of maps that count when private companies made and they sold to the communities. And this is one that was drawn. And I know from where you sit, you can't really make it out, but you know, we started with where we are at the museum. We go out, we make a left. It's only 3 miles to the basically the Gates house that we're talking about, where the trip ends. And incredibly, I always thought it's much longer. You know, people say, "Oh, well, where's that Underground Railroad house?" I'll go, well, 4, 5, 6 miles that way, type of thing. You know. So and a lot of the roads existed, and of course, the streams were very important. I'm going to stand up here and point to a couple things. Okay, Ashley Road existed in 1855. Why is it called Ashley Road?
Don't know.
Okay, so Mr. Ashley had his farm here somewhere. I'm missing it, wherever it is. But there's a Mr. Ashley who had his farm there, so there actually was. It wasn't some young teenage love throb that people named the road after. In fact, it went to 1855, amazed me too. And actually, it's kind of an interesting road. You know, climbs up to everywhere and then hooks over, ties into Tyona. I won't even ask you what Tyona is named after. You know, Sylvia?
I don't. I've often wondered.
Okay. There was a town of Tyona which sort of existed before, right around in here. I think it became North Main eventually. McIntyre, you've heard of the McIntyre? That's where it was, basically. There was a kerosene company that said if you use our product, which happened to be, okay, Tyona, whatever, we'll give you free gallons of kerosene you can use in your general store and sell it. So it became that. So, I mean, names are kind of funny as far as whatever. Corson Road hooks right into Ashley right there. There's a cemetery right in this area, another cemetery at Corsons Corners or the Gates House, schoolhouse number 3, which still exists, the building, and of course there's the one schoolhouse that was in Bowers. Do you know anybody who went to any of the one-room schoolhouses around here? Rita, who would have been that?
My dad and my 2 uncles, they just lived there and they walked to Bowers Corners.
Okay.
Great stories.
Warren Zimmer, I know, went to a one-room schoolhouse.
Also,
Yes.
also right here in Bowers Corners.
Right.
Yeah, and the schoolhouse still exists. You probably know that.
Yeah.
The building exists.
Right.
We'll get to that later on in there a little bit. So, 3 miles approximately between the 2 locations. The road names are still basically the same. I guess the best thing to start off is the Gates brothers. Okay, and there's 2 of them starting off with no relation to Bill Gates. Or is there?
Hey,
And the answer is Bill Gates, I'm sorry, Microsoft.
right.
Okay. And there's no relation as far as genetics there. But these guys are amazing. They originally came to Binghamton, the 2 brothers on that one, Alfred and Russell. And they didn't think the land was good enough. So they went to look for better land. And better land in this case was wound up here. So they got to, from Binghamton after a couple of years, their wives were part of this idea to find good land. So after they got down to Union Center, they realized that they wanted to work their way north. They had purchased from the Boston purchase area. They had the land up there. Each one had their own 150, couple hundred acres. And they decided, since there was no road, they decided to cut one. So how do you cut a road back then? You know, the answer is axes. Okay, chainsaws, no. I don't even know if oxen were available, but you know, they basically cut their way through. All of this stuff is written in Al Parr's stories. Shirley Woodard, in her 1973 book, has all these stories in there too, and I'll quote them from there. All of my knowledge comes from others, and we're very fortunate that Al Parr and Shirley Woodard collected those together, so we have those in there. And they talk about how the brothers used their axes, cut their way through from Union Center. Yeah. What's that to you? 15 minutes by car? 5 minutes by car? Whatever. Who knows on that one. Cut their way through. They couldn't bring food with them because the wolves would attack them and stuff like that, mountain lions and stuff like that. It was a different world. Incredible guys. They don't meet people like that anymore, or who knows? We all give up and go into our car and drive away, I guess, that type of thing. But they were incredible. So they cut the road through all the way from Union Center up to the last farm up there, which was Russell's. Yeah, it's kind of neat. Pushing the wrong button. There we go. This is what the quiz is going to be on. Okay? It'll be dates and specific events that you have to. I've used this one before. It's going to be here if you're interested in some of it. Basically talks about some of the prior big facts of, I guess you want to say 1700. The one that I dwell on a little bit so you understand is the Sullivan and Clinton campaigns, which is what we talk about. And those are two generals that were asked by George Washington and the country basically to solve the Indian problem, which is brought up. We always think about West, but this was the big Indian problem here because during the Revolutionary War it was the British and certain Indian tribes versus us, whoever us would be at that time. So Clinton and Sullivan were asked to solve the problem. And one started in Williamsport, the other one started in Cooperstown, came down the rivers. They met at the town of Union. What a coincidence, right? The town of Union wasn't there where they met. No, that's a little, I'm sorry. Got 3 laughs on that one. Not worth it. Did all the wonderful things that we don't, at least I personally don't think is right, but that was germ warfare, burn the crops, destroy the villages, and it was a very advanced civilization here with farms and everything. So the next time you go to BCC and go to the movie across the way from there, that was one of the major tribes where the villages were there. Vestal Center. There was a village on top of Round Top in Endicott type of thing. And people here talk about finding a lot of the artifacts from this area. And if you go to some of the old farmers, they'll show you probably a drawer full of arrowheads and axes and stuff. So Clinton and Sullivan just basically eliminated the Indians in our area. This is taken from a book by Gay Alstrout. And she has 2 books. We have them on sale here that she came and wrote about our area, interviewed your family's in her books, right, Rita?
Yes.
Anybody else's family in their books at all that you know of? She interviewed all the older farms, put them in 2 different books, and basically talked about the female role in the area. She was sponsored by Janet Bothwell and worked at Cornell and wrote, as I said, the books. And she came here, 4 or 5 years ago, Carla? She was the last time Gray came here and gave a talk. So she's still actively involved. Sue is involved with her, communicating with her.
This is a map she would have.
So this is a map from one of her books, and basically going from here to there. And the funny thing is, I call it Corson Corners because that's what it's referred to today. Back then it was Gates Corners. And like we're at Bowers Corners, which was originally Norton's Corners. Who came first type of thing. So, short section, if we took this out of history and the people who lived there wouldn't impact our world today. And be amazed how much it would and did. Pushing the wrong buttons. Okay, this is a chart. This won't be on the quiz. Okay. But if you want to memorize it, you can. Okay. All this basically it talks about names and homes. This is the addresses of them. So we're in the Dayton house, which is 13 Nanticoke. I guess Russell Gates' house is on Old Nanticoke Road. Here we go here. So it has the names of the people, the addresses, where their houses time-wise, circa. The building we're in now was originally 1850. When the Daytons basically built the original building. 1800, 1855, 66, 76, these are the years basically of maps I could look into. And all I basically, keep saying basically, all I did here was figure out how many of these homes were there at different times. So if you went back to 1855, how many houses were on Nanticoke Road? How many people were there? So in 1855, 17 homes between here and there and 3. Today there's 59 homes along the way. Now we branch out a little bit on this one. It also includes the Slauson House, which is an incredible home, and that's on Tyona Road. And that's about a mile, less than a mile, probably half a mile from the intersection of Nanticoke and Tyona. And that's from the early 1800s. There's a great painting, which you can't see behind the screen there, that Mr. Stratton did of the Slauson household. The name Slauson, you might remember, two of their kids did the mill in 1830. So the Slauson brothers did our pictures mill. And just a couple of other little factors in here, and this is the mileage in there, which is kind of cool. And using the old maps, which is neat. And like I've been looking for the schoolhouse on Nanticoke Road. And so where would you go to find out where it is? Well, either an 1855 map and try to figure it out, or you go to Betty. And Betty, says, oh, try the fourth book over there. And she opens up to the right page, and she had a photo from 1946. So I got a lot of my information from the books, of course, Shirley Woodard, Betty Welsh, incredible source of information. And hopefully you guys, you can add to this, hopefully in the future. Okay, quiz. I'm picking on Rita tonight. Okay, Rita, there's little structures right here. Okay. Notice how that doesn't really work, does it?
Chicken fingers.
Yeah.
Here, right here.
Nice.
Okay. Who lived in those houses, Rita?
The chickens.
I'm sorry?
The chickens.
The chickens.
What type of chickens?
A white leghorn.
See, there you go. She can recognize just by the structure of those buildings what type of chickens it's suitable for.
Yeah.
So this in the 1970s, I got the photos from, you did a wonderful talk of your family. At least I thought it was, and I know your family enjoyed doing it. This is a 1970 aerial photo, which is back then kind of rare, so I don't know who did that for you guys.
These different pilots that would come, they take pictures and then they come
Oh,
to
they
your
come.
house and they'd say, I'll give you this for $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the aerial, I've got several.
Well, that's cool. Anybody know what's here now?
The town park.
Okay. Named after
The
the town.
town.
So it used to be chickens, is now kids, right? So the tennis court and whatever. This is the creek, right? We're hiding behind those trees. I guess Nanticoke is beautifully tree-lined street for quite a while on those. Okay, 26 splits off to give you an orientation. This building's still there. And where's your house, Rita? Is this it?
It's hiding in the trees.
In this area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then I made up a kind of a map above it, talking about the farms that were on either side of your farms. And the homes are still there. That was your story, wasn't it? Walking home from school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At the Durfee household.
Yeah.
You went from, where was the school you went to? Where were you walking from?
Oh, it would be from J. Ralph Ingalls.
Oh, you took the long way.
Back when, yeah.
Well, where was your house? Where did
Well,
you live?
I live where I'm living now, right
Okay.
on Main Street.
Yeah.
And,
So you got a chance to meet the Durfees and
I did.
and develop the friendship, I guess.
What I regret not writing down all that she told me. I remember some of it, but
Oh, yeah.
it's just amazing, what life was like when she was growing up.
There used to be another McGregor farm too, over on the corner of Edson and Fredericks.
Edson, Frederick.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because
Oh, I know what you're talking.
yeah, because my parents moved up where I live up on Fredericks Road way up back in 1967.
So that whole beautiful area in there.
And the McGregor, because we always called it McGregor Farm there, and I remember being in Maine Memorial as a student,
Yeah.
and the barn burned down.
And on downtown.
It was
The one
over
there.
over there, because our bus couldn't get up the hill to take us home, because that was the way the bus.
Congratulations, Rita. You have a long lost family.
Yeah.
You gonna research
I don't
it?
know what relative that was, but I know we always called it the McGregor Farm, because
Sure,
we
it was
thought
the
we were all
Brennans?
talking in school, all the McGregor barns on fire, and it was a huge fire. I mean, you could
Okay.
big smoke. I mean, it was
You
bad.
guys remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was in 1967. Yeah.
It was a creamery originally,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
a huge thing.
That was a huge fire. I remember
Yeah,
that.
a lot of chickens burned up in there.
Yep.
And this is why we need this organization to keep that stuff going, because a lot of people like to know that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a long time, there was burned, this area was the burned chicken feather odor. Really,
Oh,
it
yeah.
just permeated the air and stayed there
We
for
did,
quite a while.
we did, I remember, yeah.
They think somebody started it.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's
It wasn't Phil's Chicken House, that's all
We
right.
have to beep that on the web. We have to beep that off the
Okay,
presentation.
stop. I'm forgetting that we're recording this now, so.
Yeah, keep you honest. We're gonna need that lawyer, Carl.
Where we are, 1850, this wing was added in 1870 after another fire. I'm surprised that so many places actually are still around. So they turned it more Victorian. Okay, so the Dayton family. Okay, this is the Kenyons who lived here. This is their 50th anniversary. Is the TV clear in the back and everything?
Oh, very good.
I know that
Wonderful.
this nice young man here who brought
He
this
did well.
technology into our world is so,
Yeah.
so nice.
You did good, Gordy.
Thank you guys for voting for it.
So this is their 50th in 1936. An old photo. Now, I love to think of this place right here is this large open door area. And that's where, this is basically, I guess, where they had their carriages in here, and I guess summer kitchen maybe is the one part of that, and attached to the house. And amazingly similar. You get, it was purchased in '76, I think, from McGregor's. Did a great job preserving it. This story here, don't read it. Oh, there it is behind me. Because for a mere $5, you can have your own copy of this. The history of this building, basically, and this is taken right out of it. It was written in 1970s by one of our earlier historians in our group here. Talks about the history of whens and wheres, going back to, I want to say 76, but maybe not. 1807, 1792, we're talking about in there. So, this is not part of our tour, because this is not a local school. It is a local school if you think of Bourne Hill. It was up on top of that. And Joanne, I know, was part of the year 2000 transfer of finding an old schoolhouse and moving it here. So thank you for doing that. Who else is involved in that too, besides? Nobody else here?
It was a lot of people from Maine Memorial.
So they had the
Yeah.
PTA, the teachers group, and the Historical Society got together and decided to get an old-fashioned schoolhouse to show the kids what it was like. And the story I'm told, and helped me with this one, they originally wanted to build a reproduction, and it cost too much.
And yeah, any new construction required code.
Electricity
Yeah,
and
heating
outhouse,
codes.
the whole, yeah. So you guys got in the cars and drove around and found old
Yeah,
schools?
Tech Kolar found this school out right across the county line in Tioga County.
Right.
That the people were gonna tear it down, they really didn't want it, and they offered it to us, and so all we had to do was move it. Yeah.
What, $2,000? How much? 20,000?
10,000.
10,000.
10,000 to move it. Yeah, plus the foundation, plus the roof, we had to replace the roof, when they brought it in.
Stop traffic when the came
That was,
down
it
though.
was wrapped in blue tarp, I mean, it was pretty,
Yeah.
pretty special. Yeah, all the kids from Maine Memorial came out to the road and watched it go by.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
So the 13 one-room schoolhouses, forgetting this guy here, that we have around, that used to be, basically, I think like 10 of them are still here. And Sylvia can tell us where one of them is, right?
Yeah, my former residence down by the American Legion.
Really?
Yeah, that was a one-room schoolhouse. Originally, it was across the road. And when we purchased the place back in 69, I think it was, 68, 69, my husband's grandfather told me he remembered it being across the road and he remembered seeing it moved up in that spot, so it was transferred. But yeah, and it had, when we bought it, it was the traditional deck style. It looked like a little dollhouse.
Yeah, you must have added quite a bit on it.
We did,
Yeah.
yeah, we had it on the back and then went up as the family got bigger.
Right.
But people used to come and say, "Can we see where your bunk beds are?
Oh,
Who
my.
sleeps on top?" And the bedrooms were very tiny. I don't know how we managed, but we did. Yeah.
So that and Ann Lewis has a great book, basically Maine Then and Now. It's out of print, and I think you probably still find it somewhere out there. And she traces where they are and where the houses are. The schoolhouses still are today. Across from Allentown Cemetery is the Allentown School. And
Yeah.
just keep going. And we'll get to in a second the Bowers one too. Okay, so this is the Ransom House, named after Mr. Ransom, which is only basically across the street and maybe 300 yards up. And this is a recent photo of it. It was built in 1833, and now we're basically entering into what I'll call Bowers Corners, that type of thing, a small community. In the 1930s, this is what it looked like.
Oh, my.
So it was a gas station. People lived there. They sold. Yep, that's a photo I want. 39 cents, no, 16.9 cents a gallon. Price of 39. That was regular. I don't know. And they had high test back then too, which is interesting. Mr. Bowers, Clement in this case, Janet's dad, took this and a few other homes under his task, and he decided in the, I want to say the Rockefeller concept of saving old buildings. Now, part of the idea was like in Williamsburg or other communities around the Ford Museum in Michigan, where they would bring homes in and recondition them. What he decided to do, Mr. Bowers, is he basically brought them back. He spent the money. He brought this one back to, so it looks like this today. And thank you, Mr. Bowers, for doing that. He did that with about 4 or 5 other homes in there. The front entranceway. Next time you go by at 50 miles an hour, okay, just look to your right and you'll notice it's a pretty home.
It is.
Okay, now is Mr. Norton, and this is Corporal Benjamin Norton, was the first guy attributed to coming to the town of Maine, or what will eventually become the town of Maine. And again, he's from, I think, Springfield, Massachusetts, the whole shtick in there. An advertisement of his, what will eventually become his family's carrot shops. And pretty soon Karen Flannery was sick of the word Norton. What'd you discover in there so far, Karen, the 2 buildings? Anything exciting to share or not?
Nothing new that you don't already know.
Well, I don't know.
We didn't really find much of anything at this point, so.
You're eventually gonna raise, well, you put a new roof on, I don't know if you people noticed, the new roof was put on. Under his leadership here, we put it in 2 weeks ago, I guess it's placed. And there, the old shake roof, which was put in, I think in 1979, I'm guessing, on that one, started to leak. And it was important, the metal roof was put on there. Eventually gonna raise it a couple feet.
That's the plan.
And what year you think you're gonna have this done?
Some of that will depend on J. Ralph Ingalls, I think.
Yeah.
How much money is available for us to spend and stuff. And eventually, these buildings were, Mr. Bowers bought in, I think, 1938. And he used them for his personal uses in his area. But then Janet gave it to a museum, I think in 1979, and they had plans back then which are identical to the plans we wanted. We just missed about 40 years, that type of thing. If they had done their job like they're supposed to, we wouldn't be worrying about, raising it up 2 feet and then turning it back into a carriage, where it's an absolutely gorgeous
You
place.
got a nice picture.
Yeah.
It's a great picture. Done it right the right time when you had the flowers and everything, yeah.
The lilies are there, and right where the lilies are, believe it or not, in the 1860s was a home. Which, of course, burnt down. I'm amazed how many have burnt down, or actually more amazed how many haven't burnt down, considering how they were heated back then. And this is the original one, and now I'm going to challenge him. Again, I'm picking on Sylvia today. Do you remember the old one that was right there on, was the old shack that was right there on Tayona?
On the corner, right across from Bowers.
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you
When I
remember it?
first came to town, that building was still there.
Your
And,
dad never painted it? I don't mean painted it, I mean painted
well,
it.
to tell you the truth, I don't think so.
Yeah. That was the second build, I think the first building that Norton put up there, he had somebody build it for him. It wasn't a log cabin, but it was primitive enough, stay there, primitive enough to really be incredibly, basically one room type thing. In the 60s or so, I don't know how it went away, but it didn't burn down, but
No, I guess
It's
it
taken
just
down.
somehow, I guess somebody was using it for a while, it was used for a loom place for a while, and then used for a sugar shack. And then, I don't know. It just, after a while, was not there anymore.
this would have been basically the oldest building in Broome County if it stayed, but
Wow.
we didn't exist, Historical Society, and people, that was the way it was. Back to the carriage barn areas, the ramp on the led to the second floor. They pulled the carriages up, had them painted, and lowered them back down because there's less dust up there on that. Ownership of the carriage barns, in case you're interested in a little history. Again, this will be on the internet, or be on our website, excuse me. So I've seen this painting before somewhere, I'm not sure where it is. What do you like about senility?
That's right there.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
And Mr. Stratton interpreted Bowers Corners. And Carla will nod her head and say, yes, that's true.
Is that the sugar shack?
That's,
This is their original one, that's where the lilies were. That's where the sugar shack, their original building would have been. There's still a roadway here. I don't know, it says right away in the deeds type of thing. There used to be a blacksmith shop and also a general store there. And Bowers Corners had one of everything. Actually had a shoe shop from what I've read there also. This is the Bowers building. Way back there is the Slauson household on Tayona. And the one fault shame on me for pointing it out though, is that this ramp should have been on that
On
building
that
here.
building, you're right. You are right. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, your dad, he interpreted certain things, you know.
I think he just got.
But he did
messed up
capture
somehow.
this in the 1930s, basically, what his image of, well, when he painted in 73, he put all the buildings back. That, you know, this building wasn't here in the 70s, obviously, nor this one. That one probably was. But, you know, he was a historian, but he did his homework, and he did a great job. So I thank you and your family for that. This is a tough photo to figure out. So on 26,
Yeah.
across from where, I guess, the barns are, the Norton Barns or the Bowers home is, and there was a bridge going across. And Mr. Flannery saying, where is that? I want to build that, right? So you missed it by, I think 1939 or so, they took it down.
Is that a corduroy road? Is that road actually?
I think it's probably dirt, I'm not sure if
Dirt?
it was blacktop or not. You remember it at all?
Oh.
No. I mean, this is way before you, I know, but
So the other end of that road goes by the barn.
right by the barns, and that part is still there, that road. Unfortunately, the anchors, or whatever the words would be, in the creek isn't there anymore. And so, on Nanticoke Road this way, you make a turn, cross the creek, go to the grist mill. Because 26 didn't exist, there wasn't the V in the road and stuff, and that was the way to get across back then. Okay, here's a nice old photo of Mrs. Bauer, Janet's mom, taken way back when, turn of the century. The house always had a nice presence to it. The trees are still there, sort of, and they're going away, that type of thing. And kind of neat. 1837 painting by another Bowers, Frank, F-R-A-N-C-K, son of a brother of Clement. Basically, he was an artist, and we own a few of his works, but incredible artist. And this is his rendition of it, of his home, what it looked like in the 1837 sketch. And he said, well, it looks really similar, but the only problem is it burnt down.
Yeah.
So, another fire. So in 1870, they rebuilt
Oh.
that whole area in there. Today, I guess this is an old well, right? In there.
Pretty incredible.
So the schoolhouse, this was the Bowers Schoolhouse. This is the Bowers Schoolhouse. It's attached to the building by a walkway and to the garage by a walkway. And you go inside, this is a photo of what Clement Bowers had for his guest cottage in there. He actually put in an incredible fireplace.
Look at that.
And just gorgeous with tiles all done. It just, you never realize it. Two things you wouldn't realize is number one was that was the schoolhouse, and number two is that, what was inside of it. And I'm, give you a chance to reflect on this for a second. So this is Clement, around the turn 1900, I'm guessing. I'm making up numbers now, but on that one. And he's sitting in the lap of his father's friend. And some of you have gotten down to the reading where you say, well, that's John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah.
So if you grew up in Bowers Corners and you knew John D. Rockefeller, that's impressive. That type of thing. So they were family friends and actually business partners for a while. John D. being above him in the pecking order of the corporations and stuff. But Lamont, daddy of Clement, By this time, probably moved out of Bowers Corners. He had a couple of different mansions in Binghamton because he was affluent, and he showed it. He also had, I don't know if it's the next slide or not. No, I apologize. He also had the two houses eventually, one house and the second one in Binghamton on Riverside. He had a cottage up in the hills in Binghamton area. He had his own train car where he traveled from here to his house in Colorado. So he was a very, very wealthy person living the wealthy life, and he worked hard to get there. And you know, most of you probably know that John D. Rockefeller grew up in Berkshire.
Richford.
Yes.
Richard, right.
There's a sign there where the homestead used to be.
Yeah,
The house is
it's
no
just a
longer
shack.
there.
Some of the foundation is still left, and that's it.
Yeah.
So next time you go to Potato Festival, you can go visit it. Is that it? Have you been to the actual site, or
Yeah,
there's nothing much there besides the sign?
just some foundation parts of it, and that's it. And it's a hole there, and the sign.
He left as a young teenager, I think. The family left. The father was a scoundrel. That's a nice way of saying it, right? He had to basically supply a lot of the monies and ingenuity into the household and brought money in. Eventually, he becomes the John D. Rockefeller that we know about. So, you know, a lot of the local history is fascinating in that sense there. Okay, this is the Slosson Farm. Absolutely gorgeous. Originally, it was a four-room building, and they've added, obviously, to it. And here's the next going up the road here, and there's something you guys can add a lot to know. Some of you all of a sudden thinking about this because it's modern history to you. This is all new to me. Jerry Zimmer, the Zimmer farm, the only thing left is the barn. What happened to the house?
Burned.
The story of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah.
While they were there or no? While they were still around, living in it and working it?
No, they had already moved out of it.
Okay.
They moved on to the other farm, homestead, the Zimmer homestead.
Which is up Tiona?
Yeah.
The next Zimmer farm up
Yeah.
yeah.
On Nanticoke.
On Nanticoke, I
Yeah.
meant to say
On
that.
Nanticoke.
Alyssa, daughter of Helen,
Yeah.
Jim, was asking me about it the other day, and I should probably send her in your direction. You would probably have more information on that. She was curious about the family history.
Yeah.
It's her, Alyssa, who teaches kindergarten over here, her dad, Jim, was the brother of.
Right.
Okay.
And you've got to mention that particular farm had a milk house. For years, there was the milk house gang that met there, my husband being one of them. Every single night after work, they would all gather, and people would say, "What do they do there? What do they do?"
Were they watching what, CNN or?
No, I used to say, no, they drink their beer and they solve world problems. And that was the only answer I could come up with.
Well, the way Rita's laughing, there must have been other things going on there, that type of thing. So Jerry, the oldest, I'm not sure.
He was the oldest,
Yeah,
yes.
he's the one who became the pilot,
Yes.
who here we, am I in the right place? So
Oh,
Jerry.
the naming of the town, it's not the town office, well, we'll call it town offices, is after him, dedicated a few years ago. And his wife was here. She died last
she
year.
did die.
Yeah.
Yes.
She spent her entire life trying to find his remains.
She went over there several times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
it would go right up to the mountaintop where he crashed, looking for whatever they could find with a guide. It was so sad. It was.
Yeah, that is.
There was nothing to bring home. He the whole thing was just disintegrated.
Right.
I never saw two braver parents though. We were close friends, so
Mm-hmm.
we had watched them go through this, and they just didn't cry. They put on a strong front, and I think they just did that for everybody around them. I remember Elma wearing glasses you know, shaded glasses, and I thought, oh, I bet she
Okay.
cried today.
Yeah.
You know, but they never talked about it. The only time they talked about it is if they were presented with an award or the flag, and
Right.
you know, but it was so sad, not just for them, but for everybody.
Well, it's really nice that the town has taken under their wing to,
Absolutely.
especially the building right here.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's neat, thank you. Going up a little bit further, the Taylor House, Kucharskis live there currently, I believe. And it kind of neat is, this is taken basically a few days ago. Looks just like the 1876 illustration that was in one of the books there. This barn is still here, right there, and the household is hidden behind this hedgerow here right now. Anyhow, the dog, I have no idea where he is today, but
I went inside that little farm area recently, you know, somebody that was parked there, and she's renovating that.
it's turned into an apartment. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Oh, it's beautiful. I said, I want to live here.
Yes, you're correct.
Oh,
I mean, I remember the first time I saw it, Rod Gallagher was hanging garlic in there.
yeah.
You know, but it's been around since, well, 100 plus years here. So 229 Nanticoke, beautiful home. Again, a Bowers project where over the years it had been converted into a Victorian home and he reconverted it back to what it looked like. He was related because, I'll get this wrong, but Clemens' dad, okay, his grandfather married one of the daughters who grew up here, Asha Taylor, and you know, so they knew it. The Taylors came from New Hampshire. Mr. Bowers, Gardner in this case, came from New Hampshire. They knew each other there by coincidence or whatever. He winds up buying a lot just a little bit further south of them and marries a daughter. And then, you know, Taylors and Bowers are related in that way. Same location. It's a beautiful home. The one next to it, the Ames House, I think we're still calling it the Ames House. Very similar in design and a little bit younger. And just remember, these were working farms, 150 plus acres in there. And of course, right across the street is a beautiful flats, good farming area in there. Lee Ames, who I never met, yes, no?
Yes.
You both knew?
Yes.
Is it true he was 4'10"?
Yeah.
Powerful guy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And of course his wife.
Strong.
I'm sorry.
He was a strong, hard worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his wife was Dorothy, who wrote all the poetry.
Oh,
that
she
we
was
had.
wonderful with her
Yeah.
writings. Yes.
So. And the story goes that one of these guys kicked him and he didn't like it, so he got rid of him. Is that what you do with horses back then? I don't know. Okay, just above the house. And here is looking down on that flats in there. It's a painting that was made this last year by Richard Henry.
Oh,
And this, take the houses away and add trees, and that's what we were like, you know. We still are rural, basically, in there. Okay, Ashley Road, named after Mr. Ashley. Right? Went up and over, which must have been a hell of a thing to cut your way through up and over. And why would you do it up and over? Well, I'm told that the land up on top was great for farming. Good soils up there. At the end of Ashley, in this version, I've lost it somewhere. Oh, here's Mr. Ashley right here, William Ashley. There's the Tiana Cemetery, which you could go by for years and never know what's there.
right.
And I guess you got to go private road to get to it in there, but that comes in later when one of the Gates brothers dies, that's where he decides to be buried into. Across from Ashley Road is the Moulton Farm, which I know nothing about, just cool looking place. And again, Richard Henry did this painting of it. They're reinforcing, putting new lumber in and everything, a lot of activity. It's a working farm, because I always see cattle right there in there. Okay, Roselle Road. We're looking north, and just a little bit up from the Moulton Farm, goes this way. And Charlie Baldwin told me to drive up that, so I follow whatever Charlie says. And I got to the end, it's a dead end. He says, "See those two barns?" I go, "Okay." Yeah. He says, "That's where the road used to go." So Nanacoke used to be this twisty, turning, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't connect, it goes into a dead end now. And
So the road went right between the two barns.
two barns, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mr. Pomeroy was part of our community for a while. He was a painter.
That's wonderful.
I always liked this painting.
Oh my.
It belongs to us. It's part of our archives, whatever. And for years I looked at it and I just thought it was humorous. I was wondering,
The character on the
now, is he
side.
going there or not? More than likely.
Making a beeline to
Well, this is the Gates School number 3. Blanche Walter, we got some of her literature the other day, and she writes about, a 15-page essay on her life as a teacher. And she starts out about talking about in 1932 how she was working at the Gates School, one-room schoolhouse. Again, family friends of some of you guys?
Yeah, I remember her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her husband drove school bus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was my bus driver.
When were we talking about? Give me a year, 50-something?
55, probably.
Before that, they didn't have school buses? Did they always have school buses when they started in the 30s?
I'm not sure when the school
The
bus-
one-room schoolhouses, of course, you got there, you walked.
Yeah,
And they were about every 2 miles, there was a school for that reason.
Yeah, I do know one of the, I'm trying to think who did it. Somebody converted an old farm wagon into a pickup. And they would pick up, because Marcel Hamill
That's how
talks about being picked up.
that was horse-drawn.
Yes,
Cool.
yeah, so.
Dumb question, was it yellow? Why are school buses yellow is
Yeah.
a question,
Yeah.
right? So that's the 1940s photo, I think it's 46, of what became of, I'm gonna go back for a second, that. And the only difference between ours and this one, of course, is they had this mudroom, whatever, I have no extension.
This one over here also had more to it than what we have now.
Okay,
I believe that's the same type of thing that was
so the
originally.
kids would have come in and left their clothing, whatever.
Yeah, they had to have that for certainly coats and.
Not the gymnasium, not the library,
I think not.
not the lunchroom, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
no.
So the home kept its character, and this is the home today. You still can find it in there. The chimney's still in the same place, and then the extra wing in there. So, Gates School number 3, named Gates School because the property was donated by Stephen Gates, another Gates person who lived right next to it. Okay, so here's the Gates School, Ashley Road. Okay, we're coming up to Louis Gates, who was one of the sons. Family history, a little bit of the Gates. These guys here, we don't have to be concerned, they never came. Russell and Alfred. Alfred had 15 children. I have no idea. He had more than one wife too, I'm thinking here. always a reverend. They were associated with the Baptist Church. They were some of the earliest members or organizing members of that church. And then Russell Gates is the other one in there. I'm going to go back up a second. So Russell had 3 kids. William, who was the one who was the minister at the Baptist Church, but also had the academy in town. We taught for 15 years, high school basically. Louis, the middle kid, and then Cyrus, the one who has the farm at the end of our story here. Right. So this is Louis, the middle brother's home, which was here until, guess what? It burned down in 97. His property there. When Russell died, he divided his lands up into 3 for his 3 kids. So, and this photo is out of Ann Lewis's book, and you start looking as to where they were buried, which is kind of interesting at that time. The one reason is that on this property here, which is the Underground Railroad house that everybody talks about on Nanaco, to the right of that, a little bit north, they had their own family cemetery. With, I think, 16 graves in there. But not all the members there. Even the guy, Cyrus, is not even buried there. Cyrus's father, Russell, was the originator of an Underground Railroad, and then his son took over. And his house, this is a different house than his dad's, and he has that underground thing. Who here's been inside?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it sort of
It is
kind of neat?
tour.
I'm going to go to Karen for a second. Did you see where the cubby into the
Yeah, it was still there, it looked nice.
Now it's still owned by a member of the Gates family. I'm not sure who it is. I know Steve Buckham had told me about it. And this gentleman has, I guess, 4 different properties around the country, and it has really not been used or open for a long time on that one, which is an incredible thing. Cute little story here. The front door, this was just taken a few days ago, I think. The front door is not in the center. It's not symmetrical.
Yeah, never noticed it.
And when Cyrus was having,
Even the windows aren't.
Yeah, right, right.
the windows are okay.
They're not.
Well, they're not.
They're all,
All of them are.
Yeah.
So when Cyrus brought in an architect from New York City to build Cyrus.
Right.
Brought an architect to build his home. About halfway through the construction, he decided that he wanted the staircase to be built. It was inside staircase, so he had to change all the plans over, type of thing. So normally this type house would be perfectly symmetrical. In that case, there, it's go on the internet, incredible amount of stuff in there. But nobody will verify that it's an Underground Railroad place, only because these things are never written down, right? So it's all word of mouth. The story of this one comes from Paul Gonzalez and his wife. Help me with her name. Mrs. Gonzalez.
Yeah, that doesn't.
That doesn't count, I know. She's the one who did a lot of the interviews. She was a Gates by history, so she would talk about the Underground Railroad and stuff like that. There was another Underground Railroad stop on the other side of Union Center. And after that, there was one in Vestal and then Montrose. So Montrose, Vestal, Union Center, where the brick house going up Payne Road was the farmhouse that was part of that. Underground Railroad was a minister on that. This whole area was basically pro-abolitionist, getting rid of slavery, with one big exception, and I'll get to that in a second. So he took over his father's idea of an Underground Railroad stop. The next one was in Whitney Point. The next one is verified to be in Ithaca. So that's how our branch of the Underground Railroad occurred. And there's a few books written on the researching of that type of thing. So this is a farmstead And in today's world, there's everything still there. It's a beautiful barn across the road there. That's Old Nanticoke Road. This is taken from Nanticoke Road. Blacksmith shop. In the back, there are two barns. One of the barns was they called a bee barn, where they kept their hives of bees for their honey and everything. This is the thing in the bedroom with this opening for the Underground Railroad for people go into. And lots of stories about it, and it's really a source of pride, I would think, of our area.
Says Louise Gates Gonzalez.
Okay, so there you go. Thank you,
That's
Joey.
her name, yeah.
Louise?
Yeah.
I'm losing where you read it.
Or the one you did the picture at the bottom.
Okay,
The great granddaughter.
okay. And what's kind of neat is, again, in the time that Jana was alive, Bowers, and she brought in people to do the research in this area, a lot of this stuff would have been forgotten. Now Steve Buchema was a history teacher in Whitney Point. He's retired. I don't think he still lives in the area. I met him a couple years ago, and he was very proud that he used to live there for a long, long time in there. So push the right button, Phil. Painting that we've had, I always like to work into, this was done this last year. Suzanne Worth painted this of the Gonzales area. It's absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful area, and it's because it's not on Nanticoke, most people have no clue as to where it is in a sense. Old Nanticoke just branches, hooks around. And at the end of the so that's the original from the 1840s or 50s, I guess, on that one.
The
And
largest outhouse.
That's our largest.
it was, we had history in a sense on our side when it was considered to be the largest outhouse of Broome County. I don't know what that means. I mean, the one behind us here
Close to a name.
is a 3-holer. I have no idea keep doing that, what size that one is. Anybody out there know? I guess it'll be a great mystery of life on that one.
Is it still on their property?
It's still there. This was taken 2 years ago.
I'll sneak up and open the door.
I'll drive, you go.
One, two,
Survey
three or four.
Are you done?
Maybe he has a lock on it, but I don't think so.
I don't think,
I never could figure out why they put more than one hole in a thing. I mean,
They
who's
had
gonna
big
sit next to
families.
each other?
No, it's big families, and that's why they did it.
Well, part of it also, you
Yeah,
have to go
well.
to Joe's lecture on that one, but part of it was because the opening for kids was always made small.
Oh, okay.
Because if it was an adult
You didn't
size
want your
opening,
kids to
you'd lose a
fall
kid or
in
two,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would not be good.
So,
Like the one out here in back has 3 different sizes.
No kidding.
Small, medium, and large. So it's for the little two, the ones that are potty trained, because
Yeah.
quite often the potty was on the side. Then the middle one was for the mother, and the last
Okay.
one was for the husband.
Yeah, that's fair.
not
Okay.
necessarily at the same time.
No, all the girls went together and all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it was so cold,
Oh, yeah.
they liked to be in there together because it was warmer that way.
So the next couple of pages, these two, are a couple little series of stories that are out of Shirley's book. And just fascinating. Again, we once talked about reprinting that 1973 one. And something happened in 73, Joanne, do you remember?
Yeah, big celebration.
Oh,
So we have another celebration coming up.
we do, 175 years. Extra.
And, perhaps, I don't know if we could find somehow on the 73. Ann's book came out right around the 150th. And I'm hoping to have another publication for this one coming up.
Right.
We gotta work on that together. I'm planning on doing a history of Broome County from the turn of the century now through photography. So, try to get that. And so, and then this is the part that just, I don't understand at all. And maybe it's because my family background is being average. You know, these guys are not average. So this is a list of some of the people in the 3 miles between here and there. It's Bowers and Gates, the two families own, but others in there. And I'm going to go one more page and then come back again. So these are stories about the individuals in this 3 mile stretch and how they went out in the world and did some things. Now, Taylor's, well, Norton's I mentioned, besides a geologist in here, John Milton Taylor was a store owner basically, was very successful in New York City and on and on and on. So where else do you get 3 miles of road with dozens of highly successful business people? And, you know, and again, that excludes the town of Maine. You know, this is just a 3 mile group, Bowers Corners and up, that type of thing. So fascinating to me. I learned a lot. This will be part of our history, hopefully, on that one. Any thoughts or suggestions or additions you want to add to this before we call this a night? These are the actual people by themselves. So. And I got one more page I'll give you in a couple of seconds. So Gardner was the gentleman who came here from New Hampshire. His wife, little did he know, lived up the road. I think they had 7 or 8 children in the Taylor household. Husband and wife, the artist. Sarah Jane Bowers Gates, it was her children who associated with the Rockefellers and developed the whole thing. And a lot of this stuff is from our archives or Find a Grave or other stuff out there. And then these are some more individuals who, whatever. Anyhow, that's it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.